It was one of those nights when the world seemed eerily still, as if holding its breath before an unseen storm. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. The only sound in our peaceful suburban home was the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall, each tick echoing in the silence, like a countdown to some inevitable truth. A faint breeze stirred outside, barely noticeable, creating a heavy atmosphere that wrapped around me like a shroud. I sat alone in the living room, half watching the television as flickering images danced across the screen. My mind was far away, tangled in a web of mistrust and doubt that had haunted me for months. Tonight would be the culmination of it all. Despite every hope that I was wrong, I braced myself to confirm the truth that had gnawed at my gut for so long. Emily and I had been married for 10 years. A decade filled with memories spanning both highs and lows. In the beginning, I believed we shared an unbreakable trust, a bond forged in the fires of young love. We had met in college, and it felt as if the universe had conspired to bring us together. I fell for her almost instantly. Emily was everything I had ever dreamed of, smart, funny, and kind. Together, we built a life that I thought would last forever, a dream as solid as the rings we exchanged on our wedding day. But as the years passed, I found myself deceiving my own heart, clinging to a fairy tale that felt increasingly fragile. The changes in Emily were subtle at first, almost imperceptible. She began coming home later than usual, her excuses revolving around extra work, late meetings, or outings with friends. For a long time, I wanted desperately to believe her, to trust her completely as I had always done. Yet, as time went on, small peculiarities in her behavior began to unsettle me. She started wearing a new perfume, one I had never seen before, its scent lingering in the air long after she left the room. When I was near, she would angle her phone away, checking it more often and smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. The warmth that once radiated from her felt distant, as if her body was present but her heart had wandered elsewhere. Despite my best efforts to dismiss my concerns, a gut feeling, like a shadow lurking just out of sight, refused to let me rest. Then one evening, everything unraveled. Emily told me she was going to dinner with colleagues, a routine that had become alarmingly frequent. My stomach twisted, a tight knot of anxiety forming as I nodded, pretending to be okay with it. But something about that night felt different, almost foreboding. Before she left, I caught a fleeting glance from her, a look that sent an icy chill down my spine and made my heart race. Once she was gone, I made a fateful decision. I reached for her phone, the object that held the answers to all my doubts and fears. She had left her phone behind this time. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, dread pooling in my stomach. I prayed I wouldn't find anything incriminating, that this would all turn out to be a misunderstanding. But as I scrolled through her messages, my worst fears were confirmed. There was a long thread of conversations with someone named Luke, a name I had never heard in all our years together. The sweet words exchanged between them, the hidden plans, the promises to meet that very night. It all felt like a punch to the gut. My hand shook violently as I read each message, my heart racing in disbelief. This wasn't a one-time mistake. She had been seeing him for months, weaving a secret life while pretending everything was fine between us. The urge to scream, to throw her phone against the wall, was overwhelming. But instead, I sat there frozen, suffocated by the weight of her betrayal. I had vowed to cherish her forever, to stand by her side no matter what. But now, I realized she had been living a lie. She was with him tonight, probably holding his hand, laughing, maybe even kissing him the way she used to kiss me. The thought twisted like a knife in my chest. I wanted to confront her immediately, to demand an explanation that could somehow make sense of this betrayal. But I felt paralyzed, my mind clouded with confusion and hurt. I needed time to think, to process how everything had spiraled so drastically out of control. So I waited. The turmoil in my chest was unbearable as I sat in silence, desperate to see if she would meet my gaze with the same warmth she once had, or if the distance between us had grown insurmountable. The house was oppressively still, a suffocating void that seemed to grow with each passing second. Every tick of the clock was a cruel reminder of how long she had been gone. Midnight came and went, and still she hadn't returned. The stillness weighed on me like an unbearable burden. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each one more tormenting than the last. Was she with him now? Were they laughing at me? Did she feel any guilt at all? Or had she already written me off as unimportant, just a fleeting phase in her life? Finally, around 1 a.m., I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. My heart began to pound, its rhythm chaotic, a mixture of anger and anticipation. I sat up on the couch, bracing myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. Her footsteps approached the door, soft yet deliberate. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open. She stepped inside, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that I was waiting for her in the shadows. She looked radiant, carefree even, as though she had just returned from the most joyful evening of her life. The sight of her only deepened the sick, churning feeling in my stomach. She moved through the room with an air of ease, placing her keys on the counter and shrugging off her coat. For a moment, she didn't notice me. But when her eyes finally landed on me, her entire demeanor shifted. Her face froze in shock, the cheerful expression vanishing as though it had never existed. "Oh," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "You're still up?" I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at her, my emotions boiling beneath the surface. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all swirling within me, threatening to erupt. She shifted uncomfortably under my gaze, her confidence faltering. "I was just out with the girls for that work thing," she said, her tone strained and unconvincing. I remained silent, my eyes locked on hers, letting the tension stretch between us like a taut wire about to snap. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my pocket and pulled out her phone. Her eyes widened in fear as the realization dawned on her. She knew what I had found. Holding the phone up, my voice trembled with suppressed rage. "I know everything," I said, my words slicing through the heavy silence like a blade. "I saw the messages. I know you've been seeing someone else." Her face turned pale, the color draining as if she had seen a ghost. She instinctively reached for the phone, but I pulled it back, keeping it out of her reach. "Explain," I demanded, my voice rising with fury. "How do you explain months of sneaking around, lying to me, and pretending everything was fine?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but they did nothing to soften the storm raging inside me. She had destroyed everything: our trust, our bond, our future. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed bitterly, my voice sharp with disbelief. "A mistake happens once. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice you made over and over again. You betrayed me. For him. Was our marriage worth so little to you?" She collapsed onto the couch, her body trembling as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her apologies and tears felt hollow, like echoes in an empty room. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was gone, replaced by a stranger who had shattered my heart without hesitation. "I want you to leave," I said finally, my voice cold and unyielding. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, pleading. "Please, don't do this. We can work through this. I still love you." Her words felt meaningless, empty of the sincerity they might have once carried. There was no fixing this, no mending what she had broken. She had made her choices, and now we were both paying the price. "I don't care," I replied, my tone devoid of emotion. "You need to leave." Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her sobbing alone in the hollow shell of what was once our home. Once in the bedroom, I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint sound of her cries from downstairs. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of pain and regret. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had destroyed a part of me. For years, I had built my identity around our love, around our life together. And now all of that was gone, leaving behind nothing but emptiness. As I lay there, numb with grief, I realized something that chilled me to the core. It wasn't just her I had lost. I had lost a version of myself. The man who believed in her, who trusted her, who loved her without hesitation. In its place was only a hollow, broken shell of the man I used to be.